Siwoo felt a sense of fear. Siwoo apologizes for his behavior and says that he remembers everything from their fight. And he didn't know how it was possible, but despite being fully conscious, he couldn't stop himself from attacking Shiolwa. He apologizes again and says Shiolwa was only trying to help him, but he put her in danger. She tells him to drink the cup. Siwoo gets surprised. She tells him that the monster must run away while they were fighting, but the ownership was still Siwoo's, and that monster would probably be hiding somewhere. Siwoo drinks it and makes a weird expression. He asks Siwa if there was no alternative method. Siwa laughs and asks if Siwoo still thought that he was a human. She says if he was not prepared to hurt someone to get stronger, then he might not survive. He says that it was it, and it hasn't registered that he will kill or eat monsters, and it was true that he didn't want to, but in his point of view, no matter who it was, they were all dangerous monsters who hurt people, and if Siwoo don't do things correctly, then in a few months, the people which he knew would get hurt. With a determined expression, he says that he would kill if he need to and even eat them if he need to. He says that he asked if there was an alternate method just in case if there was another chance for it. Siawa says that as she has already told Siwoo, the most effective method to increase his monster force was to eat other monster. However, it was only possible when it was a duel agreed by both, since there is no rule. Otherwise, weak monsters would be caught and won't be able to survive. She warns him that easy prey won't be coming to him anymore. Even if he was a halfling, many monsters saw that he was a goblin who knows a little Escharum, and rumors about Siwoo must have spread by now. So monsters which he can easily defeat won't be fighting him, but it will be opposite. Monster which Siwoo won't be able to handle at his level will challenge him. She stands up and tells Siwoo to come outside since she had a gift for him. They go outside, and Siwoo gets shocked to see Siolwa standing in front of a werewolf monster being chained. She asks if it was okay. Siwoo asks if it was a monster. She tells him that it was and wasn't. He was a monster, which has lost its right to be a monster. It had lost its sense of reasoning and lost themselves to their instincts, just like Siwoo was when he fought with Shiolwa. These kind of monsters were beasts and called shutterwalk in the Korean peninsula. She jumps at the top of the hut and asks why was Siwoo staring like that. He looks at her, and suddenly the beast attacks Siwoo from behind. He manages to dodge the attack. Seowa thinks that she thought Siwoo would freeze and hesitate and get beaten up at the start, but he was using his body better than she expected. However, he might be running away for a while since his opponent was stronger than him. The beast tries to attack Siwoo and he dodges it. Seowa looks at him thinking that he was unable to swing the goblin's club consciously, and T was not different. She wasn't expecting Siwoo to win the fight, even thought the beast had lost his sense of reasoning. His physical ability was higher than Siwoo. And moreover, Siwoo was not compatible with the aspects of Escharum, and it only comes out when he was on the brink of death. Suddenly, Siwoo dodges the attack and takes a boxing stance and starts punching the beast. Seowa gets shocked. In his life in human world, Siwoo had learned boxing by his gym trainer to lose weight. Unlike other people who trained in martial arts, Siwoo's goal wasn't physical strength, but to lose weight. He keeps punching the beast with powerful blows. But despite his consistent effort, he wasn't able to lose weight, but Siwoo never gave up. He had played 16 types of sports in his school, and among them 7 were combat sports. Although his training period was short, his efforts and his born athleticism as a goblin made him perfectly absorb the 7 combat sports he played. Siwa kicks the beast powerfully, knocking him down. Siwa gets surprised seeing Siwa defeat the beast. Siwa stops and asks how he was supposed to eat the beast. The beast lying there unconscious. Siwa gets shocked and asks if it was martial arts, and says that she hopes Siwa didn't have such power from the start because it was a technique made by humans. It wasn't made to match a monster's body and strength, and it hasn't been long since Siwa had gained a monster's body either, but he was able to get a sense of things and use it in an actual fight more than she had. Thought and his potential was very high. Siwoo asks what he needs to do from there because he thinks that he had won and says that he won't have to eat the beast to clean it exactly. Siwa says that it wasn't that, but they should talk after Siwoo had definitely won. Siwoo gets confused. Suddenly the beast bits off Siwoo's shoulder. Siwoo gets scared to find his shoulder torn apart. The beast attacks Siwoo. Siwa says that the biggest reason why humans were scared of getting injured wasn't because of pain, but because of the fear of permanently losing a part of body, and it was a primal fear humans were born with, and was enough to cause a 17-year-old like Siwoo to have a panic attack. The beast was about to attack Siwoo, and suddenly his shoulder regenerates. Siwoo gets surprised to see this. The beast scratches Siwoo's chest, but he was mesmerized by his body regenerating. There were many differences between humans and monsters, but the biggest difference was the body's durability and regenerative ability. Siwoo gets ready to attack the beast, and one more difference was the gap between the mindset. So as long as it wasn't a fatal injury or death, a monster's body can easily regenerate. Siwoo punches the beast with all his might, and the moment one accepts it as common sense, the restriction from your unconscious self to protect itself is lifted, and the physical abilities can be increased greatly. Siwoo punches the beast, throwing it far away. He says it felt like his arm was going to break, but it paid off. His attacks have gotten much stronger than before. He felt from the rebound that his fist was getting hit by a car, but he wasn't the only one who can regenerate. Siwoo was getting ready to fight again, and suddenly Siwa says that the fight was over, and Siwoo had won because the attack he hit earlier was stuck well, and the force was good. Although the beast won't die of it, but it won't be able to regenerate immediately, so Siwoo wins. She asks Siwoo how it felt to use magic for the first time in his life. Siwoo gets confused and asks that he actually used magic and says that he didn't do anything particularly. Seowa tells him that even if it wasn't high-level magic, it can be used in various ways, and his body rapidly regenerated because of magic, and the last attack he hit was also the result of magic, used in addition to Siwa's physical ability. She asks if he felt anything else beside that he powerfully strike the beast. Siwoo says that he wasn't sure, but he felt something similar to static electricity in his fist. She says that it was magic, and because Siwoo don't have much experience, he won't be able to feel it clearly. She says that the reason she made him fight the beast was for giving Siwoo the experience, and because if he fights, and there is blood and Siwoo struggles, then he would have displayed his magic. She says that she was still surprised because she thought Siwoo would roll around at least 10 days before he gets a rough sense of things. She used her magic and lifts the beast and brings it near them. Siwoo blushes by the compliment. She tells him to finish the beast. She looks at him and asks if he had ever killed anyone before. Siwoo declines. She says that ending it in one go would be the best for both him and the beast. She tells him to hit it above the belly button, since for majority of monsters that was the weak point, and the place where the cinnabar that stores the magic. She tells Siwoo to pierce it in one swing by gathering his magic. Siwoo steps forward and thinks about his friends and mother, and strikes the beast, killing it. Siwoo opens his fist, and a bead was in his hand. She tells him that it was the cinnabar that she spoke of earlier, and it was called the magic bead. She tells him if he swallows it, then the owner's magic will become his. Siwoo swallows the bead and thinks if something was going to happen, but nothing happens. He says that it was weird, and he thought that something like bam bam boom should have happened as soon as he swallowed it. Suddenly he sees a black bird sitting on his shoulder. Siwoo gets surprised and screams out of fear. The bird changes into a girl. Siawa asks the girl why she was there out of the blue, and Siawa was sure that she didn't have any business with Siawa. The girl pouts and says that friends don't need a reason to meet, but it was true that she was there because she had some business. She smiles and asks Siwoo if he was the half-goblin from the rumors. She introduces herself as Sol Mai. She had wings for her hands. Siwoo bows and introduces himself. Siawa, annoyed, asks what business Sol had. She says that she was working part-time under Mangti. She says that since they had caught the two demons, gods, she has come instead of Manti to handle the settlement and give them the reward for catching them. Xiaowa sighs and says to give the reward to Siwoo since he was the one who defeated them. Sol says that she knew and was watching it from the start. He leans towards him and says that Siwoo was impressive and she can't believe that he was a human until recently. She says that at this rate, Siwoo might become their leading competitor in the festival. Xiao laughs and says that he might just be able to, but he will be killed the second he steps foot in the battleground. She says that she thinks Siwoo has potential. She looks at Siwoo and says she was going to give him a reward. She says it's been a while, so she'll give him a choice. The chance to go home this instant, or a chance to take a step forward, is a strong monster, which does Siwoo once she asks, smiling. In the human world, Yushin receives a call from Siwoo. He says that Siwoo didn't show at the school, and his phone was shut off, so he picked the unknown number since it might be Siwoo. Yushin asks Siwoo if something was wrong. Siwoo says that he wanted to say no but he can't. He says that he has a crazy favor to ask Yushin. Yushin says to tell him already. Siwoo tells him something and Yushin shouts on call that what kind of nonsense he was saying and asks Siwoo where he was. Siwoo tells him that he has some unavoidable circumstances and his mother will go crazy if she finds that he disappeared for a month. Siwoo tells Yushin to tell him mother that he went to the traditional martial arts center in Andong for a month to lose weight. Yushin reminds him that it wasn't a place that accepts regular people. Siwoo says that he knew but he really have no other choice, and that is why Siwoo was asking Yushin. Yushin agrees and says that Siwoo said he can't tell him the reason, and if he thinks that Yushin wouldn't believe then Siwoo was wrong and can tell him anything because he might be able to help Siwoo. Siwoo looks at Sol and she stops him from telling Yushin about the existence of monsters because it would be breaking the rules of the monster world and she'll be punished along with Siwoo too. Yushin agrees to Siwoo's request and says if something happens and if Siwoo can reach out to him, then he must do it. He cuts the call saying it didn't feel right. Back in the monster world, Siwoo says confused that going back to the human world was only possible if he was qualified. Sol says that it was true, but she don't make up things that don't exist, and if he really want to go back, she can take him back to the human world right at that time. She asks him again to choose from the two choices. Siwoo says that he will leave the monster world after he passes the test he is supposed to take. Sol gets surprised and asks why. He says that if he didn't learn things properly, then something more worse than not being able to go back home can happen. After the fight with the beast, he was more convinced that he must have the power to respond to such situations, so he had decided to get stronger at a monster. He looks at her with a determined expression. Sol gets excited and says what Siwoo said just now was really cooler than she had expected. Siwoo gets angry and says to give Siwoo what she needs to give and stop teasing him, and there was no way that going back to human world can be a reward. She says that Sol had a bad habit of leading others for no reason and sounding them out. Sol says that it was a test to know others' personality and what kind of mindset they have. Sol asks Seal what if she read the book Sol gave her. Solo replies that it was so childish and simple that she wasn't able to read more than a couple of pages. Sol pouts and says that she personally made it for Siawa, and if she want to turn into a human, then Siawa have to memorize the basics at least. Sol sighs and says that she was going to take Siwoo with him somewhere for a while since she was thinking of taking him out from the start. Siawa says to do as she likes. Sol spreads her wings and transforms into a giant bird. Siwoo gets amazed by this. She says again that she don't make up things that don't exist. She tells him that she was a monster that has the right to go back and forth into the human world, and under the condition that he was responsible for everything that happens once every 6 months. She was able to take an unqualified monster into the human world with her. Siwa looks at them with a worried expression. Sol picks up Siwoo in her claws and flies away. In the human world, Siwoo thanks Sol for letting him borrow her phone, and because of her, he was able to alleviate his worries a little. Sol says she was glad and asks if he will be fine by just one call to his friend, and says that there was still more time, and it will be better if Siwoo sees his family once. Siwoo says that his family only consisted of his mother who was on a business trip out of the town, and it was a bit EF relief because if his mother was home, then she would have made a fuss about Siwoo being disappeared. Siwoo asks if Sol had something she likes to eat and says he can buy her dinner to repay her. She stands up and says that there was something she really wanted to try ever since the first time she made her trip to the human world, and it was a bit too hard for her to eat, so she haven't had a single opportunity to eat it until then. Siwoo gets surprised and asks what it was. A while later, at Siwoo's house, Siwoo prepares a home-cooked dinner for Sol. He says that he tried to set the table with everything he had at home. He asks if Sol would really be satisfied with just this. Sol says while eating that she was pretty satisfied because she always wanted to try homemade food since the human food she tried was mostly school. Siwoo asks how she eats school food. Sol tells him that she attends school and asks if he knew about Hajun High School. Siwoo gets surprised and says that it was right next to his school. She says that she's been attending since the beginning of the year, but she didn't have a friend that she was close enough to visit their home. Siwoo thinks that from Sol's personality she seemed to have many friends. They eat the meal. Sol says that it was really good and had a different vibe from the food that she bought at a restaurant. Saul snaps her fingers saying she should give Siwoo the rewards he mentioned earlier, and a scroll gets summoned. She tells him that the scroll was called a monster storage and it was something like a bag and a smartphone that monsters use. And just like she did, Siwoo can call the scroll freely. She points her fingers and the scroll opens with a box drawn on it. She tells him that it can display what he wants and he can scroll like a phone on the scroll, and inside can be kept items he wants. She takes out a box and says he can store and take out things like she did and he can carry items without thinking about the size and weight of it. There were other uses too, and he'll be able to familiarize after using it a few times. Siwoo opens the box and finds some gold coins, a monster storage, and arm equipment inside the box. Saul tells him that the one in the middle was his monster storage, and on the left was a pile of goblin face coins, which was the currency used in the monster world. And lastly, the item was a goblin treasure that was passed down to the generations. They were items that can display various abilities by imbuing monster force in them, just like the old human folktales. She tells him that Siwoo would typically get only the monster storage and coins as reward for catching a shutterwalk, but Mangti told her to pack the item along, and Mangti seems to have high hopes for him. Siwoo says that high hopes probably means in regards of the great festival to pick the king of the monsters. Saul says, although they weren't to the extent of humans, but monsters also feel a sense of belonging towards their region, and if a monster from Korea become the king of monsters, that will be something to boast about. And it was regrettable during the most recent festival too. Siwoo asks if a monster from Korea almost became the king. Saul agrees and says that the monster was there until the very end, and it was a close match with the current king. Siwoo exclaims that it was quite regrettable. Saul says that the more interesting thing was that monster was also a goblin species just like Siwoo. And they were so strong that the entire history of monsters in the Korea, there was no monster that could rival the monster. Siwoo picks up the item saying even if it was true he didn't know about such monster, and there was still a part of him that wonders what was all this, and he wished he wakes up from this just like it was a dream. She leans near him with a cup of coffee in her hand and says Siwoo is afraid of the laws of the monster world getting reset and threatening the human world, and if that was the case, Siwoo can be the monster king and maintain the rules for the next 666 years. Siwoo asks if he can ask a question to her. Saul smiles and says he see and ask whatever he wants, and it felt like she had made a human friend, and if Siwoo was curious about anything, then she will try her best to answer the question. He points towards her monster storage and says it was flashing like that for a while. She looks at it and it was flashing emergency signal. She looks at it and says that it was an emergency call order, and it reaches out to monsters in the area whenever there's a serious emergency situation. And if an emergency order was sent to human world, then the only reason was because a monster broke. The rules are harm to human. She sips her coffee and says something like that hasn't happened in a few decades. Suddenly she realizes that it was an emergency call order. She screams and gets scared. Siwoo gets worried. During the night, at Siwoo's house, he snaps his fingers and his monster storage appears. He puts his hand inside it and takes out the goblin item he received earlier. He thinks if he'd just have to put it on and go around, or was it an armor, and that he has to ask how to use it. He looks at the clock and it was almost 10. A little ago, after the emergency order came, Saul says that it was just 6 and they have half a day, so they just need to go back into the monster world by 10 p.m. She leaves saying she'll be back soon and tells Siwoo to wait for her return. Siwoo agrees. She says that Siwoo can speak comfortably with her since they were friends and tells him to call her Solmai when she comes back. At the present time, Siwoo thinks that it was past 10 p.m. and he wonders if something happened to Sol. He gets worried and says he should have gotten her number at least. He looks at his father's photograph and wonders if he has goblin blood in him, then it must be from his father's side. He thinks if his father knew that he was a goblin himself, he suddenly hears something and finds his window open. Somewhere in an alley, a beast was about to kill a human and it suddenly gets attacked. Saul says that she's been catching them again and again, yet there was no end of them, and at this rate, she'll run out of feathers. The beast looks at her and she asks what it was wriggling and that they didn't even feel pain. The beast attacks her and she counters it and slashes the beast into half. The human gets scared. Saul tells him not to worry and that his friend will be fine since the injury wasn't that deep, and an ambulance WS on its way. Suddenly a giant beast appears behind her and was about to attack her. It suddenly gets killed by someone, A boy appears saying Saul need to be careful. And if rumors spread that she lost to something like it, then her family's reputation will get lost, and she won't be able to go around with her head held high. She sighs and says her family wasn't with a good reputation to begin with, and she knew that her appa would be her by side. The boy wearing a black jacket asks who she was calling appa. Saul smiles and says that if he was a bit older and close to her, then he was her appa, or maybe he wanted her to call him by this name Goyu. He points his fingers at the human, asking if there was a polite way to be called. Saul says then she'll call him Araboni. He tells her to call him whatever she wanted. He hypnotizes the human and brainwashes him and tells him that he and his friend got hit by a car. And the driver ran away in a hurry, and until the ambulance arrives, the human shouldn't be afraid and rest comfortably. Saul says that hypnosis wasn't his family's inherited ability though. She says that she heard learning something separately was really hard, and she also tried to learn from Saula, but she just got scolded, and she gave up. Goyu looks at her and says that she was a front runner. He says there were 2 beasts and asks how many Saul has caught until then. She says that including them she has caught a total of 24, and there wasn't a proper monster among them, and they were all shutterwalks on leashes controlled by someone else. From what she was, they have killed 7 and injured over 50 humans. She asks who and why would someone do such thing, and that she was sure that they were aware of how heavy a crime was to injure humans, and asks what sort of amusement they get from doing it. Goyu says that they weren't doing it for amusement, but it was for gain. Saul says that she don't understand what sort of gain they would get from killing humans. Goyu says that it was reasonable because it was something that their generation didn't know that well. He explains that since old days, humans were eaten up by goblins, and it wasn't to just satisfy their appetite, but rather consuming human blood and flesh was itself a potent health food for monsters. Saul says she can't believe and that she has never heard of something like that. Gu says that it was a widely known fact long ago that wasn't passed to their generation, that they can easily become strong by eating human meat. He says that if this truth was known, then the human world won't be as quiet as it was now. He says that Saul would probably know since she has taken the test that there weren't many instances where young kids like them. Not even 500-year-old would choose to struggle to take the complicated test unless they were oddballs like Saul and Goju, because the human world was a frustrating place where there was no real need to go in and out until the law changes, and that was what their generation's perception of the human world. He says that Saul should know it since she was helping Mangti, that in the recent days many monsters have destroyed themselves by going too far to gain power. Goju says that if it was him, he wouldn't have created this kind of mess, and rather than attracting attention by sending evil spirits that can't even move delicately, he would have done it himself by capturing humans one by one before eating. Saul says that they must be extremely coward to not being able to attack themselves at humans who can't even resist. Goyu says that even if they were evil spirit, if they have the skill to call hundreds of them, then it was safer to use them than to step forward and attack themselves. Saul suddenly remembers something, and she leaves in a hurry, asking Goyu to clean up after her. At Siwoo's house, he stands at the balcony saying that the window was not open a while ago. He looks here and there to find someone. Suddenly, someone in black suit and mask approaches him from behind, thinking Siwoo is easy target. And if he knew that, he wouldn't have gone that far to put that much effort to attack Siwoo. He tries to attack Siwoo, but he manages to dodge and grabs his arm and throws him out of the window. Siwoo says that though his heart was about to leap out of his chest, he didn't understand his abilities or one of his goblin's characteristics, that he rarely get beaten by similar tactics twice. The window's fence had been broken when Choi Siwoo threw the man to the ground as it was about to attack him. Choi Siwoo sighed in relief when he sensed the man from behind and tossed it out of the window of his house. Choi Siwoo remembered a time when he was caught off guard from behind and the fear he felt when attacked in that way. So, he was relieved he adapted to the situation and made something change. Choi Siwoo knew there was a suspicious man behind him. If he didn't recognize that it was the same feeling he had in the monster world, he might have been killed easily. When he threw the man down in his house, he checked the damage and hoped no one was hurt by his toss, because he didn't think about his surroundings or any people that might be around. When Choi Siwoo looked down to where he tossed the suspicious man, he was surprised that it had already disappeared. Choi Siwoo was shocked when he heard the man talk and tell him not to worry. The suspicious man that attacked him seemed to know what Choi Siwoo was worrying about. He explained that he had put all the humans in the area to sleep. This was because when people screamed, he wouldn't be comfortable enough to clean up. The man revealed his true form and asked Choi Siwoo if he really was the rumored goblin. He expected Choi Siwoo to strike him with power. Though his monster force was not that strong, the monster grabbed Choi Siwoo by the neck as the monster choked him. He explained that he put people to sleep so that the chaos wouldn't make his job harder. The monster continued to taunt Choi Siwoo as he struggled to get up, saying that the ground seemed to weaken. Choi Siwoo remembered when he had thrown the monster, and now it was returning the favor by throwing him harder. Choi Siwoo trembled as he hit the ground. The snake-like monster mocked him, saying it had no intentions of letting him go. Choi Siwoo realized that this monster had no patience for fighting and was a danger to humans. He also worried about his friend who hadn't returned. Choi Siwoo's current problem was all because of this monster. The monster didn't want to waste time fighting Choi Siwoo, thinking he was just a nuisance. As Choi Siwoo struggled to get up, the monster transformed into his full form, a large snake about to eat him. Choi Siwoo had a hunch he was in real danger. Before the monster could eat him, he offered Choi Siwoo a choice. He could either give up and be eaten quietly or struggle and die painfully. Choi Siwoo couldn't speak and froze. The monster told him not to look that way because what he would do wouldn't negatively impact him. Choi Siwoo was shocked and surprised as the monster showed him a picture of him with his mother and used it as a threat. The monster told him that if he let him be eaten, the monster would spare his mother and devour others without hesitation. Choi Siwoo quickly charged at the monster when he heard about his mother being used as a threat. He punched the monster, but it was just a bait to provoke him to attack first. As Choi Siwoo's power was about to activate, he felt something strange in his body and couldn't move. The monster sarcastically apologized for the rude threat regarding Choi Siwoo's mother. Choi Siwoo trembled as the monster spoke to him. The monster seemed comfortable and Choi Siwoo was trembling all over his body. It appeared that the monster spoke of an attack to him when Choi Siwoo punched him in the face. The monster mocked him because he knew his provocation had worked. Choi Siwoo trembled, saying he was poisoned by the monster when it attacked him from behind. When Choi Siwoo attacked and touched the monster's ability activated, poisoning him. The monster told Choi Siwoo he had an incredible ability, but couldn't use it on someone stronger than him. Luckily, it worked on Choi Siwoo. The monster also told Choi Siwoo that he'd heard that a bloodline like his could pin others down with just a stare. Choi Siwoo struggled and couldn't move his body. The monster complained that the rules in the monster world were unfair because weaker beings had no choice but to be preyed on by the stronger. Choi Siwoo still struggled to move his body, and the monster suggested that if he knew how to use the thing on his arm, the goblin treasure, things might be different. Choi Siwoo desperately thought of a plan to move his body and change the outcome just as the monster was about to eat him. Choi Siwoo figured out how to move his body. The monster was shocked when Choi Siwoo unleashed a strong magical power. Choi Siwoo sighed in relief when the monster was blown back and didn't devour him. The monster dodged the attack and realized he could have been seriously hurt if it had hit him. The monster quickly recovered and attacked Choi Siwoo with its long tail. Choi Siwoo managed to dodge and hit the wall. Despite the poison circulating in his body, he could still stand. This made the snake monster wonder if a weak goblin was still a goblin. As the snake monster observed Choi Siwoo, he felt something strange in his body. A knife pierced the snake monster's skin, and he wondered what had pierced it. Suddenly, a strange masked man arrived, saying some praises. When the praises were said aloud, the swords that had pierced the snake's skin released enormous power, electrocuting the monster. Even though Choi Siwoo was weakened, he noticed the masked man who had come to the fight. The masked man seemed to be known by the species attacking. The monster mocked the masked man for holding a useless weapon, a human specialty. The monster continued to mock the masked man, but the masked man appeared dangerous and beyond a normal being. The monster wondered whether to continue fighting or leave, thinking things might become dangerous. To everyone's surprise, the monster had a plan to damage himself. The masked man wondered what he was doing when the snake monster damaged himself and released a deity-class monster from his blood. The snake monster explained that he couldn't save the monster until the festival due to the circumstances. The masked man looked at the monster that emerged from the snake's blood. The snake monster told the masked man that the monster was of deity class by nature, and his name was known far and wide. He didn't know how the monster ended up in that state. The snake monster mentioned that the monster was a good match for someone crazy about looking good. Choi Siwoo was still weak and the monster wanted to finish him off. The monster charged at the masked man, and they continued to fight. The masked man tried to stab the monster, but it didn't work. When the monster was pierced, it released a powerful force. The masked man dodged it and attempted a sneak attack on the snake monster. The snake monster was surprised when the masked man attacked from behind while hiding behind the monster he had summoned. As the snake monster was caught off guard, the masked man pierced through him and then stabbed the snake monster in the head. Choi Siwoo was surprised that the masked man had successfully defeated the snake monster and saved him. The masked man noticed Choi Siwoo and told him that he didn't seem like the snake monster. He advised Choi Siwoo to answer his questions if he wanted to survive. Choi Siwoo asked the masked man why he was in the area and expressed disbelief at what was happening. The masked man was confused about what Choi Siwoo was talking about. Choi Siwoo asked the masked man if he recognized his voice. The man removed his mask, called out Choi Siwoo's name, and revealed himself as Yushin. Choi Siwoo told him that what happened to him was a long story. Yushin took a few steps closer to examine the changes that had taken place while Choi Siwoo was away. Moving closer, Yushin gently held Choi Siwoo with a touch of worry in his expression. He asked about what had happened and was surprised when he saw Choi Siwoo's altered appearance. Choi Siwoo requested Yushin to hold on for a moment, expressing his need to explain the situation. But suddenly, he had difficulty breathing, causing him stress. Observing Choi Siwoo closely, Yushin's mind raced as he considered the possibility that Choi Siwoo might be affected by a unique form of poisoning rather than an ordinary one. Yushin speculated that even with his emergency medicine, he might not have the means to effectively treat Choi Siwoo's condition. Upon careful observation, Yushin detected a distinct change in Choi Siwoo's physical condition. Yushin was taken aback by the realization that Choi Siwoo's body was actually in the process of healing itself. They both paused for a moment. While they were in the midst of their momentary pause, Yushin's attention was suddenly drawn to the fact that the monstrous creature was attempting to escape from their vicinity. Yushin's gaze fell upon the trail of the serpent-like monster's blood, clearly visible as it marked the creature's slow retreat, distancing itself from the monster. Amidst Yushin's distraction due to his reunion with Choi Siwoo, the tail of the monster became visible as it made a gradual effort to distance itself. Seizing the opportunity, the monster seemed to believe that retreating was a favorable course of action. Yushin and Choi Siwoo both watched as the monster managed to escape, and Yushin couldn't help but feel that the situation was becoming even more chaotic and insane. After some time, they decided to step outside to take a deep breath of fresh air. Once outside, Choi Siwoo turned to Yushin and asked if he was all right. Yushin felt a bit puzzled, unsure if Choi Siwoo was inquiring about his own well-being. He responded, saying that he believed he was indeed okay. Upon seeing Yushin's perplexed expression, Choi Siwoo simply smiled. It was quite a surprise for Yushin to discover that his friend of 3 years was in fact a supernatural hybrid. Even more astonishing was the revelation that Choi Siwoo belonged to the category of a goblin hybrid. Yushin felt a surge of frustration welling up within him. He couldn't believe that for 3 whole years, Choi Siwoo's true nature as a goblin had remained completely hidden from his senses. Yushin even went so far as to criticize the Minister of National Defense for aspiring to become the Moon King over a subject they didn't suspect. As Yushin contemplated the situation, he couldn't help but imagine how his father would react if he found out that Yushin had been oblivious to Choi Siwoo's goblin identity. He felt entirely clueless and anticipated that his father might even find humor in the situation. After hearing Yushin's frustrations, Choi Siwoo told Yushin about his house and how he had never mentioned what kind of training center it was. Yushin decided to come clean about the training center's purpose. He confided in Choi Siwoo that his family had a duty to eliminate supernatural creatures, and if he chose not to undergo training, he would likely be regarded as an outcast or even considered somewhat deranged within their family circles. Being part of that family, Choi Siwoo began to reflect on the idea that Yushin might have been aware of the upcoming ancestral ceremony, scheduled to take place in 6 months, and became curious about the matter. Choi Siwoo asked Yushin about how common ancestral ceremonies were. Yushin admitted they weren't common at all and explained that he didn't pay much attention to supernatural creatures fighting each other. However, The situation became more serious when these creatures started threatening humans. Choi Siwoo became more interested in Yushin's words, showing eagerness to learn more about recent changes. Yushin told Choi Siwoo that among the yakais, humans were a significant source of power. He mentioned that some yakais, aiming for higher status like becoming a king, had started doing something more sinister. They not only consumed virtues but also preyed on and devoured humans. Yushin explained that in the past month, there had been more cases of people going missing, especially in crowded cities. Although there was no concrete evidence linking these incidents to yakais, the aftermath was always chaotic, with signs of violence, bloodshed, and destruction. While Yushin was talking about the strange yakai behavior, he suddenly noticed someone approaching. He quickly got up, ready to protect himself and Choi Siwoo. A bright light appeared before them, and Choi Siwoo was surprised to see Solmai. Solmai asked if Choi Siwoo was okay and apologized for her long absence. Yushin, however, raised his sword, expressing his discontent and warning Solmai not to come closer. He firmly stated that he would take action if she ignored his warning. Choi Siwoo was about to share information about Solmai, but Yushin's defensive stance made him think that she might be a yakai. Yushin explained that he issued a warning because he believed Solmai understood the rules and regulations. He thought warning a yakai might not be necessary if they intended to attack. Choi Siwoo glanced warily at Solmai, and Yushin began to consider the possibility that she was a dangerous monster. Solmai admitted that she was a monster, and Yushin said that despite their human-like appearance, monsters were still violent creatures, even turning against their own leaders. Yushin told Choi Siwoo that he was fundamentally a human and didn't need approval from monsters to exist in the human world. Solmai believed that Choi Siwoo's status in the supernatural world was established, and ignoring the rules could have severe consequences for him. She thought about finding a way for them to escape and resolve the situation before it escalated. While she respected Yushin's abilities, she doubted he could handle a conflict with Choi Siwoo. Solmai was determined to escape with Choi Siwoo and felt she had no choice but to confront Yushin. She told Yushin that, as Choi Siwoo's guardian, she had a responsibility to take him with her. Yushin responded firmly, warning her that if she continued to ignore his warning, he might have to eliminate her. Convinced that Solmai was ignoring his caution, Yushin decided to proceed with his plan to eliminate her. However, out of the blue, Choi Siwoo stepped forward and took Yushin's sword from him. Yushin was surprised by Choi Siwoo's swift action, and Choi Siwoo examined the sword, intrigued by its design and the engraved symbols on it. Yushin wondered if Choi Siwoo was under the influence of some kind of magic or manipulation. He also sensed a change in Choi Siwoo's demeanor and energy. Choi Siwoo shared his thoughts, acknowledging that the idea of yakais consuming their own king due to madness was similar to Yushin's situation. He explained that he had taken another's life to protect himself and those around him. Solmai listened as Choi Siwoo outlined his intentions to continue as a goblin without harming humans or causing damage, while still being willing to consume non-essential yakais if necessary for his survival. Yushin reassured Choi Siwoo that he didn't need to become a resident of the supernatural realm and devour monsters, as he could protect him and his mother in the human world. With Yushin's sword lowered, Choi Siwoo had something else to say. He surprised both Yushin and Solmai by declaring his intention to become the Yakai King. Yushin questioned the rationality of this aspiration and asked if Choi Siwoo understood the implications of such a statement. Choi Siwoo admitted he didn't have an extensive explanation, but remained determined to try. Yushin, after a moment of contemplation, said that he understood Choi Siwoo's intentions were what mattered, whether he was human or a supernatural being. He added that he wouldn't hesitate to eliminate Choi Siwoo if he crossed certain boundaries as a supernatural being. Choi Siwoo agreed with Yushin's words, acknowledging the correctness of his assessment. They reached a mutual understanding. Yushin retrieved his mask, inquired about Solmai's name, and she introduced herself as a promising messenger within the half-yakai court. Yushin apologized to Solmai for intervening in yakai affairs, but emphasized the need for fairness and the absence of unjust harm. He warned that he would step in if anyone was unfairly killed or injured, and would take decisive action as the chief shaman of the Star Hall. He reassured Choi Siwoo about his mother's well-being and said his farewell, As Yushin walked away, Choi Siwoo watched him, feeling relieved. Solmai was nearly overwhelmed with emotions, finding the encounter with the shaman intimidating and overwhelming. Suddenly, a man's voice broke the silence, and it was Goyu who had followed Solmai. He explained his decision to follow her lead and praised her courage, although he pointed out the risks she had taken. Goyu shifted his attention to Choi Siwoo and asked if he was the goblin known for his recklessness. Choi Siwoo greeted Goyu, who began explaining the concept of creatures with a foundation and animals being referred to as beast demons. As these beings evolved into yakai, their status changed not only in appearance but also in their true nature. Yakai with such characteristics were commonly known as phantom beasts. Choi Siwoo appeared surprised by this revelation, and a large yakai monster's aura materialized in front of him. Goyu introduced himself, shared his name, and expressed pleasure at meeting Choi Siwoo. He held the role of a representative within the Goyu Black Tortoise clan. Goyu extended his hand toward Choi Siwoo as a friendly greeting and challenge. He explained that to become a yakai king, Choi Siwoo would need to defeat him in combat. Goyu had a warm smile as he offered his greetings. In response, Choi Siwoo extended his hand to meet Goyu's gesture. However, he noticed a change in Goyu's demeanor. He felt that Goyu's mood had shifted from what it was just a moment ago. In the midst of Choi Siwoo's intention to shake Goyu's hand, Salme's voice suddenly erupted with urgency. She raised her voice to warn Choi Siwoo against proceeding with the handshake. Startled by the sudden warning, Choi Siwoo turned to Sol Mai for an explanation of her unexpected outburst. Sol Mai expressed her frustration towards Goyu, demanding to know the reason for his sudden appearance and voicing her displeasure. She pointed out that Choi Siwoo had already faced a challenging day, questioning why Goyu chose this moment to show up. Goyu responded defiantly, asking Choi Siwoo if he found it amusing to witness a half-goblin boasting about the ambition to become the yakai king. Goyu showcased his power by biting his nails and unleashing his mastery of dark arts. A violet and dark circle formed, enveloping both Goyu and Choi Siwoo. Goyu maintained his grip on Choi Siwoo's hand, while the mysterious circle surrounded them. Unexpectedly, Goyu employed a teleportation technique, causing them to vanish from their previous position. As they touched down, Choi Siwoo struggled to maintain his balance. He found the experience of teleportation unfamiliar and sudden, but Goyu acknowledged that the process had been challenging, especially for Choi Siwoo on his first attempt at teleportation. He admired Choi Siwoo's ability to remain on his feet. As Goyu observed Choi Siwoo, he noticed that Choi Siwoo didn't display the level of surprise one might expect from a sudden teleportation. Instead, Choi Siwoo regarded him with an aura of alarm and suspicion. In response, Choi Siwoo asked if Goyu had intentionally planned to seize him from the beginning. Goyu acknowledged that Choi Siwoo's assumption was indeed the most probable outcome, but wanted to ask Choi Siwoo something else. This question caught Choi Siwoo off guard as it revolved around his engagement with computer games. The topic seemed unexpected, and Choi Siwoo had to process it briefly. Choi Siwoo explained that he used to play action games during his middle school years, but had reduced his gaming as he transitioned to high school. Goyu responded with a mischievous smile, agreeing with Choi Siwoo's point. However, Choi Siwoo's alarm grew as he noticed Goyu's sudden movement, indicating an intention to attack from behind. Demonstrating his quick reflexes and agile movement, Choi Siwoo's attention was then drawn to an unexpected event. An ice crystal formed on the surface of the lake. Surprised by this, he considered his next course of action. Many crystals appeared, seemingly orchestrated by Goyu, with the intent to attack Choi Siwoo. Goyu watched closely as Choi Siwoo skillfully evaded each crystal, preparing to charge towards him. Goyu recognized Choi Siwoo's impressive speed and agility. Acknowledging that Choi Siwoo had targeted him before he could react with evasive maneuvers, Goyu kept his gaze fixed on Choi Siwoo, considering the possibility that Choi Siwoo might have initiated the attack. Goyu marveled at Choi Siwoo's impressive performance, acknowledging that despite being relatively new to these circumstances, Choi Siwoo displayed remarkable skills. Choi Siwoo remained vigilant against potential threats, ready to counter any danger. He concentrated his power, channeling it into his fist, preparing for an impending attack against Goyu. Choi Si-woo released a powerful burst of energy aimed directly at Goyu, using the Goblin's treasure armor. This attack caused the surroundings to be enveloped in a growing cloud of smoke. Choi Si-woo maintained a defensive stance, remaining vigilant and ready to respond to any potential counterattacks. While it seemed like Choi Si-woo's attack had hit its target, he remained cautious and ready for any developments. Amidst the enveloping smoke, an unusual light caught Choi Si-woo's attention, and he kept a cautious posture, focusing on the source of the strange light. In the midst of his attack, Choi Si-woo realized something about the concept of life force, gaining a deeper insight into the situation. He felt a surge of electrical energy in his body, originating from his lower extremities. Choi Si-woo recognized that the attack he had unleashed represented only a fraction of his true power, about 10%. As the full moon continued to rise, Goyu complimented Choi Si-woo for his efforts and actions with a smile. Goyu admitted that he hadn't anticipated the swift return of the icicle to his possession. He questioned whether they had progressed beyond the initial phase of their encounter. In response, Choi Si-woo asked if Goyu's intentions were to consume or devour him, expressing his observations that he didn't sense any imminent threat or malevolent intent from Goyu. Goyu shared his perspective, explaining that he found it awkward to forcefully create a persona that didn't truly exist. He clarified that he didn't harbor grudges or specific appetites, although Choi Si-woo's previous statements had irritated him. Goyu asked Choi Si-woo if he truly comprehended the essence of being a yakai, and Choi Si-woo affirmed that he did. Goyu encouraged Choi Si-woo to contemplate whether it seemed unusual to select a ruler for centuries based solely on a single ritual. Goyu explained that the beings in their world were loyal to their desires and instincts. While the powerful might establish laws, it didn't mean these creatures would necessarily follow them. The Yakai King's role was to safeguard against potential chaos and violence. This agreement was based on the shared sentiment of preserving their realm, maintaining harmony for survival. Goyu mentioned that the current Yakai King had upheld a law for 666 years, similar to the one choice he who had contemplated. Goyu emphasized the significance of the tradition and the efforts put into maintaining it over time. Goyu went on to explain that it seemed like even the patience of the Yakai had its limits. He asked Choi Si-woo if he understood the implications of his words. Choi Si-woo thought about the situation and realized that if the next Yakai King were to issue the same law, not everyone would obediently follow it as they had in the past. Goyu praised Choi Si-woo for grasping the concept quickly and explained that even if it were a command from the king, the Yakai wouldn't necessarily obey it at all times. Many Yakai could cause trouble and not follow the king's rules, even if the king was powerful. The consequences would affect not only the new Yakai King, but also the entire system that had been maintained for a long time. After carefully considering Choi Si-woo's words, Goyu came to the realization that Choi Si-woo didn't conform to the traditional image of a Yakai, and his issues were more about not understanding the ways of the world. Goyu recognized that Choi Si-woo's open display of affection without considering the consequences might be the root of his problem. Choi Si-woo asked Goyu if he wanted him to take back the words he had said earlier. Goyu admitted that he initially thought he could easily defeat Choi Si-woo, but upon closer examination, he acknowledged Choi Si-woo's significant growth and potential. He proposed that if Choi Si-woo joined his side and allowed him to become the Yakai King, he would grant him the authority to rule over the Korean peninsula. Goyu mentioned that he might spare a select few humans close to him. Choi Si-woo surprised Goyu by asking whether he believed his chances of becoming the Yakai King were high. Goyu confidently responded that there was no one stronger than him in the Yakai world. As they discussed whether Choi Si-woo would join him, Choi Si-woo reached a decision. He reached out his hand, indicating his decision to join Goyu's side. Goyu was taken aback but pleased, acknowledging Choi Si-woo's acceptance of his proposal, particularly if it meant safeguarding the people around him. Goyu approved of Choi Si-woo's decision, and Choi Si-woo confidently expressed that it was a smart choice to join hands, emphasizing that he felt no guilt about what he was about to do. As they held hands, an intense surge of electric power flowed between them, surprising Goyu. Choi Si-woo had a sneaky plan all along. This situation was a significant departure from their earlier wrestling, with Choi Si-woo deliberately reserving some of his energy. With unwavering determination, Choi Siwoo harnessed a technique he had never used before, channeling his energy into a powerful surge that radiated from within him, driven by his determination. Choi Siwoo swiftly brought Goyu to the ground in a fierce confrontation fueled by anger. His actions were characterized by determination and unwavering readiness, leaving no room for hesitation. Choi Siwoo's anger ignited a formidable burst of power as he engaged in a fierce confrontation against Goyu, the air around them filled with thick smoke, making it hard to see. This happened because Choi Siwoo used a lot of powerful energy against Goyu, changing the atmosphere dramatically. Choi Siwoo knelt down and concentrated all his strong power for an attack. His body shook with the effort and tiny sparks flickered all over him. Afterward, he opened his eyes just a bit and everything seemed still, like time had stopped. His body kept trembling, and he struggled to get up because he was so tired. He couldn't use his yakai energy for a while because he used it all up. Choi Siwoo looked bewildered and unsure, showing he was finding it hard to stand up because he was so exhausted. As the intense moment continued, Choi Siwoo knelt on the ground, and it seemed like he had very little chance of winning. Goyu, his powerful opponent, stood firm in front of him. Goyu was telling Choi Siwoo that they were both using up their energy and risking their lives. He said it was true combat, something beyond human understanding, like a gift from heaven. Choi Siwoo looked up at Goyu as he spoke. The air was tense, and the situation felt very serious. Goyu stared down at Choi Siwoo, acknowledging the challenge they were in. Goyu asked Choi Siwoo if he had any last words, and Choi Siwoo smiled confidently, saying he didn't need any because he was prepared to face whatever happened from the start. Surprisingly, Choi Siwoo stood up, showing he wasn't ready to give up. Goyu was taken aback by this and looked at Choi Siwoo, who got into a fighting stance determined to keep going. He made it clear that he wouldn't beg for mercy. Goyu smiled and admired Choi Siwoo's determination. He praised Choi Siwoo for speaking so well in such a tough situation. Then Goyu did something unexpected. He pointed at Choi Siwoo, making everyone wonder what he was going to do next. The tension was high, but instead of attacking, Goyu surprised everyone by smiling and patting Choi Siwoo's shoulder in a friendly way. This act of sportsmanship left Choi Siwoo looking surprised but relieved. Choi Siwoo turned to Goyu, feeling confused after Goyu unexpectedly praised him. Goyu admired Choi Siwoo's enthusiasm and spoke about approval. He explained that it meant cheering for someone, but it would be pointless to cheer for someone who couldn't become the Yakai King, as it would be a futile effort. Surprisingly, Goyu changed the tone of their conversation. He cheered Choi Siwoo on and admitted that he was also a bit worried about the Night of the Yakai. Goyu shared some of his personal experiences and reflections. He said he didn't like the chaotic and destructive nature of the Yakai realm, and he preferred the peace of the human world. He also pointed out that the Yakai realm had no comics, novels, or movies, things humans enjoyed. Goyu revealed that some Yakais preferred these forms of entertainment over harming humans. Choi Siwoo noticed that Goyu often used we in his statements, suggesting a shared perspective among certain Yakais. While Choi Siwoo understood Goyu's point of view, he questioned the need for active support. In a surprising revelation, Goyu confided that being the Yakai King could be annoying and bothersome, offering a unique perspective on the title's complexity and responsibilities. He explained that even though the Korean peninsula had a high chance of producing the Yakai King, there were still other irritating issues to deal with. Goyu continued to explain the dynamics of the race for the Yakai throne. He mentioned that prominent candidates came from ancient clans, and their success depended on using ancestral magic passed down through generations. This highlighted the importance of heritage and mastering magical traditions. Goyu expanded on his earlier statement by comparing it to the idea of being born with a silver spoon, where individuals born into privilege have advantages. He emphasized that those with extensive ancestral knowledge and magical prowess were positioned to excel. Choi Siwoo asked about the challenges and responsibilities of being from an ancient clan. Comparing it to being born into an old money conglomerate, Goyu responded with a touch of humor, acknowledging Choi Siwoo's comparison, but highlighting that the reality could be more overwhelming, as there were high expectations within the clan. The conversation between Choi Siwoo and Goyu became more intricate and confusing as they discussed the complexities of the Yakai world and the pursuit of the Yakai throne. In the midst of their intense conversation, an unexpected threat lurked nearby. Sol-mai, with deadly intent, prepared to attack. She suddenly launched her attack on Goyu, catching him off guard and disrupting the tranquil moment. Her attack was intense, and the atmosphere crackled with raw energy, creating a dangerous situation. Choi Si-woo, taken aback by the violence, tried to shout and intervene. But Sol-mai's attack continued. She executed a powerful technique called the wind kick, which bore the potential to be devastating. The tranquil lake's surface rippled from the intense clash of yakai power. As a spectator caught in a whirlwind of events, Choi Si-woo was shocked by the rapid and dramatic turn of events. Their peaceful conversation had turned into a perilous showdown between Sol-mai and Goyu. Sol-mai threw Goyu aside with immense force, leaving him vulnerable. Choi Si-woo was in profound shock, unable to process the unexpected violence. Sol-mai landed gracefully on the ground, her anger and determination evident. Sol-mai revealed her intent to protect Choi Si-woo, turning her attention briefly to him. She assured him that Goyu wouldn't harm him. Choi Si-woo and Sol-mai observed the aftermath, with broken trees and disrupted surroundings. Sol-mai indicated that Goyu had escaped immediate danger. In a surprising revelation, Sol-mai mentioned that the Goyu from their earlier conversation had a double personality. This left Choi Si-woo pondering the complexities of their interactions. Sol-mai's reference to folklore, where a snake and a turtle pair up to become one, added symbolism and mysticism to the situation. This folklore hinted at the idea of transformation and evolution, suggesting that even extraordinary yakai like Goyu might have humble beginnings. Sol-mai recounted a tale from the distant past about a genius who separated yin and yang energies from his yakai power. By isolating the purest energy, the genius achieved a profound transformation and awakened to a divine power within. The descendants of the genius, to fully embrace his legacy, had to undergo rigorous discipline known as the bone-sharpening discipline. This discipline likely involved intense training and spiritual practices to hone their abilities. A side effect of this discipline was the emergence of the snake personality, which Choi Si-woo had encountered in Goyu. This revelation shed light on the complex nature of Goyu's identity. Choi Si-woo, reflecting on his earlier interactions with Goyu, shared that he hadn't initially perceived him as a bad individual. Driven by a peculiar sense of mischief, this perspective offered a more nuanced understanding of Goyu, portraying him as a complex individual with his own quirks and tendencies. Sol-mai delved further into her description of Goyu, characterizing him as essentially a snake with concentrated negative energy. This insight shed light on the source of his calm and cool demeanor, suggesting that his nature was influenced by this unique energy. Choi Si-woo confirmed that he had finished packing, and Sol-mai reassured him that he wouldn't be penalized for being late. However, Choi Si-woo was worried about the broken veranda and his mother's potential reaction. Sol-mai and Choi Si-woo's conversation was interrupted by the sudden appearance of Grandpa Mangti, who brought reassurance about the pending repairs. Grandpa Mangti requested that Sol-mai return to the yakai realm. Introducing a sense of privacy, Sol-mai expressed concern that Choi Si-woo might be penalized, defending his innocence. Grandpa Mangti reassured Sol-mai that he was aware of the situation. Grandpa Mangti insisted on speaking to Choi Si-woo alone and claimed there was another person present, leaving them puzzled. Choi Si-woo was astonished when he laid eyes on Xiaowa, who had suddenly appeared. Xiaowa observed the human living space with curiosity and charm. Choi Si-woo asked if she had received a ticket to venture to the human world, and Xiaowa explained that she had been unexpectedly dragged into this realm. Grandpa Mangti's suggestion to discuss the events of the night held importance and urgency. He described a chilling picture of 50 monsters under the control of an unknown entity attacking humans in Seoul after sunset. Grandpa Mangti's emphasis on the crude methods and lack of cover-up suggested a deliberate ploy to draw out Sol-mai and target Choi Si-woo. Sol-mai and Choi Si-woo listened attentively, understanding the gravity of the situation. Grandpa Mangt revealed that at least 200 humans had gone missing from Seoul, and the actual number was likely closer to 500. Sol-mai's shock and Choi Si-woo's concern were evident. Sol-mai speculated that at least 5 individuals were working together to orchestrate the disappearances. Grandpa Mangt hinted that the culprits behind the disappearances were yakai, making it challenging to apprehend them, especially outsiders. Seoul was shocked and terror were apparent, and Grandpa Mangti warned that if they didn't track down these dangerous yakai, they would continue to hunt humans unabated until the festival, 6 months away. To address the urgent threat, Grandpa Mangti suggested undertaking the qualifying exam earlier than planned. This proposition added a sense of urgency and responsibility to their task, as they would embark on a mission to safeguard both the human and yakai realm.